More fallout as we expect the National Guard on the streets of Chicago, and also Governor J.B. Pritzker says he's not a conspiracy theory guy, while he makes claims that Trump's trying to interfere with the election as to why he's sending in the National Guard. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Good morning, each and every weekday morning with you here on the Center Square with the Daily Show. You can check in with us with the live chat. You can also get the headlines in your inbox. Just go to thecentersquare.com where you can find today's headlines from the national page. Billions in GDP lost during first week of the government shutdown over in the federal government. You got an interesting ongoing investigative piece about congressional conflicts with multimillionaire senators blowing deadlines on disclosing stock trades. Plus, you can see some of the other headlines from across the country, including in Illinois. Pritzker blasts Trump, Illinois GOP leaders at Minneapolis event. We'll talk about that a little bit later on here. But you've also got just the Illinois headlines, which you can check out there, including the quick hits. And you had the Chicago Flips Red hold a news conference yesterday in Chicago. So those are just some of the things you can find. But you can get those in your inbox as well with the free newsletter. We are a free newswire service focused on state governments and the federal government and how it's impacting you, the taxpayer. So you go to the centersquare.com, click on newsletter, sign up, and you'll get that in your inbox each and every weekday morning. Here for Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop, the editor of Illinois for the Center Square. We do Illinois in Focus. It's a daily program to kind of give you a rundown of what's going on in the states, and we're here each and every weekday morning at 8 o'clock. So thanks for taking time with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, we got to tackle Governor J.B. Pritzker in Minneapolis with former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. But we also have to hear what Pam Bondi and Senator Dick Durbin had to say to each other yesterday during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. So that's on the way here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, each and every weekday morning here for the Center Square. Top of the morning to you.
What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. What's the rationale for that?
We'll do this again. Got to get that just nice. And go.
What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. What's the rationale for that?
You voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here. Our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
It's U.S. Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi going at it yesterday in the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Good Wednesday morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. I'm the editor of the Center Square, Illinois, and we do Illinois in Focus each and every weekday morning. So a lot to tackle here. We'll hear from Governor J.B. Pritzker, who was with Tim Walz. We'll get that in a different segment here, but we've got a ton going on when it comes to the ongoing issue of public safety in the city of Chicago with the ongoing enforcement of immigration. And you've got headlines across the way here, like, for instance, DHS debunks Governor Pritzker's harmful lies about Operation Midway Blitz. This is from the DHS website, where you can read more about that. We'll touch on that here in a moment. But you've also got ICE and DHS tackling a whole host of things, like, for instance, getting onto the streets and getting public safety. Here's a video that the Department of Homeland Security posted. And make sure that we don't get the music on there. So here we go. It's a social media video they shared, and it's something straight out of Hollywood. You can see somebody jumping over a fence, and you got body cam footage, Border Patrol driving around, people yelling at them. Then they're searching a vehicle, and you've got people being taken out of vehicles, being searched and being handcuffed, being taken out, and another person running down the street. It's body camera footage, being thrown onto the sidewalk, rolled around, police with firearms out, approaching vehicles, pulling people out, handcuffing them. So you can see this. It says, bag it, tag it, take it down. So that is the Department of Homeland Security's video they shared yesterday. And they also shared a few days ago all of the video. Again, it looked like something produced out of Hollywood of a recent raid they did on an apartment building. And it was even featured during Governor J.B. Pritzker's news event he had earlier this week. But you've got the Department of Homeland Security really hammering on this and saying that they arrested a Latin King gang member for allegedly placing a hit on Gregory Bavino, the large Border Patrol commander at large for Border Patrol. So you can read more about those particular issues. So clearly there's ongoing tensions across the board. So you have U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who yesterday testified in front of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, controlled by Republicans. Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin used to be the chairman when the Democrats controlled the U.S. Senate, but now that Republicans control the U.S. Senate, he's just a minority spokesperson. All right, so he's the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. He had these exchanges with Pam Bondi yesterday.
Attorney General, you're focusing on helping President Trump play strongman on television. He has illegally deployed troops to Chicago and other American cities and has threatened to send more. The Justice Department defends this dubious legal basis for these deployments and diverts DOJ personnel and their components to assist in these efforts. These deployments basically target Democratic-run cities and Democratic leaders, ignoring many Republican-led areas of our country with even higher crime rates, and making clear that this is for political theater, not public safety.
So you got Durbin making those statements. He also made some claims.
Federal agents pulled women and children out of their beds, crashed down the doors to their homes, destroyed their apartments, zip-tied children and others, and detained immigrants and U.S. citizens alike for hours in vans. When one witness complained about the treatment of the small children, an agent laughed at her and said, "F them kids."
Again, that's Durbin making some claims yesterday during the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. If you go to the DHS press release website, you'll see this. DHS debunks Governor Pritzker's harmful lies. I would venture to say they probably include other Democrats in this list as well. But let's just read through this a little bit because you may have picked up on some clips that Governor J.B. Pritzker shared from earlier on. He's been the rounds on various cable TV shows. Says between appearances on CNN State of the Union and a Monday afternoon press conference, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker repeatedly lied about federal law enforcement operations in Chicago. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is setting the record straight, they say, about Pritzker's lies in defending the brave men and women of Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection from his smears and slander. So Tricia McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary, said the message to J.B. Pritzker: get out of your mansion and see Chicago. If J.B. Pritzker actually walked the streets of his own city, he would see domestic terrorists and violent rioters attacking police officers, and the scourge of violent crime is a direct result of his policies. Then it goes into a, quote, smorgasbord of lies that DHS says you have Democrats and Governor J.B. Pritzker in particular saying, and let's, the idea of using zip ties on children. I think they addressed this. Let's see here. Children were zip tied. This is a shameful, disgraceful lie, said Tricia McLaughlin. Why is the sitting governor so unconcerned with criminally illegal aliens living amongst innocents in his city? The claim that a toddler was zip-tied originated from a screenshot that went viral and showed an ICE officer zip-tying a child, allegedly. This has been debunked, and you can see there. So you've got a ton of claims that they just go through and highlight were wrong from Governor J.B. Pritzker. But at the same time, you've got the issue, and here's a reporter out of Chicago for the Chicago Sun-Times. And he shared earlier this morning, prosecutors in Chicago moved to dismiss charges against the Chicago couple found with lawfully carried loaded firearms outside of ICE's Broadview facility last month. That case, as this reporter notes, has been used nationally to argue ICE agents have been endangered by the protests there. And again, you've got, the protests that clashed and the reports that came out about two individuals found with loaded firearms outside the Broadview facility up against a fence when there were clashes with Border Patrol and ICE agents and federal law enforcement. And the initial stories came out that these individuals were arrested after clashes and they had firearms on them. And this was also just, a few days after what happened down in Dallas with the sniper shooting at an ICE facility, killing two detainees. Obviously things are heightened. But if these individuals had lawfully possessed firearms on their persons, how that shakes down when they move to dismiss the case. It's interesting. So, listen, both sides might be getting things wrong or mixed up. And sometimes it's very important to, especially when you're gathering information, to when things initially happen, try to get as much as you can, but know that the initial statements that are made, the initial facts that there are presented may change and not actually be what happened on the ground. So it's kind of interesting to just break that down for you. So Durbin made those claims. DHS previously had tried to debunk Governor Pritzker making very similar claims. But then yesterday you had this exchange between the Illinois U.S. Senator and the U.S. Attorney General in particular about the guard in Chicago.
Were you consulted by the White House before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Ranking Member.
I noticed that. What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
I've been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not they had a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility. She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops to my state. That's an indication, I'm afraid, where we are politically in this place.
Later on, it was a pretty lengthy hearing. Bondi getting peppered with all kinds of questions during the Judiciary Committee hearing, which also highlighted, the question of weaponization of government. And I don't know if you guys saw the headline, but apparently Chuck Grassley, Senator, he put out a report indicating that the FBI had an officer trying to get authorized for certain things and revealed that they had been authorized to essentially get the phone records of sitting U.S. senators during the Biden administration. So it's pretty fascinating. Anyways, little tangential, but still back to the U.S. Judiciary Committee for the Senate. Bondi went back to talk about the National Guard and public safety in Chicago and elsewhere.
And to go back to your previous question, your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
So it's, again, Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, yesterday during a U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. And I imagine that we're just going to get more reaction to all of this, see how the Guard gets onto the streets. Thursday, we've got a hearing that's going to happen in the Northern District of Illinois Federal Court with the state of Illinois suing the Trump administration and a temporary restraining order being requested. And that's those who follow legal procedure. Anything can happen here. The judge could rule from the bench Thursday or take it under advisement and then issue a ruling later. How this is going to play out, we'll be watching closely. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and get the headlines in your inbox each and every weekday morning with the Center Square.
All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th place in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending.
Some of the radio chatter the Department of Homeland Security shared, saying, play the tape, stop protecting criminals. They were requesting the police were not sending. Not only did Chicago's leaders refuse to send support to federal law enforcement officers in danger, now they're lying about it. Disgusting. That is a official posting from the Department of Homeland Security on X yesterday with some of that audio. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. We'll get to some of the reaction from the police superintendent up there, Larry Snelling, but you had Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday hold a news conference and took a whole bunch of questions, and all of this about public safety, right? And we'll touch on some of that, and also he was asked by independent Chicago reporter William Kelly about the controversial comments he made of the right wing, Johnson said, wants to rehash the Civil War. So we'll hear about that. But first, something we touched on briefly Monday, the village of Broadview. And that's where a lot of the clashes between federal law enforcement and protesters have been. They have an executive order laying out protest times from 9 in the morning to 6 p.m. in the evening, and that's daily time. You had Illinois State Police last week, as we covered on Friday last week, set up perimeters for First Amendment exercise, including an area for media, and their main point was they wanted to make sure that the thoroughfare to that facility in Broadview was not impeded so that people could freely get in and out, not just for Border Patrol and ICE agents with their detainees, but also advocates for the detainees, attorneys, family bringing medication, a whole host of things. So, they're trying to just make that place in that area more safe in Broadview. So the Broadview mayor actually said in their statements they support the protesters' position, but they said last weekend aggressive protesters made things worse. So she put an executive order out saying that you have to have these essentially, protest zones. At the same time, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson put out a executive order as well, saying it's an ICE-free zone in Chicago. So we'll hear a little bit of all of this, but Governor J.B. Pritzker on Monday, after coming out and blasting the Trump administration for bringing in the National Guard to Chicago to help with public safety while there's increased immigration enforcement and increased protests, he was asked about, Broadview's saying that the protesters are unruly. What are your thoughts about that, Governor?
Obviously, this was issued by a mayor who's got the ability to issue executive orders. And she is deeply concerned about the people who live in Broadview and how they've been ill affected by the challenges in her community as a result of the way ICE is behaving. So I know that it was aimed at that. I can't speak to whether it would affect the lawsuit or I know this is about, though, keeping the people of Broadview from being targeted or being unsafe in their communities. These are folks who are just trying to get to the grocery store, take their kids to school. They live in a community that never had this kind of unrest until Donald Trump decided to do this.
So again, the governor laying out that his understanding was it's ICE that is provoking the protesters into violence, and that's why the mayor had to do this. But again, you look at the mayor's statement from Broadview, it clearly says there were aggressive protesters that just made the situation worse. And that was the mayor saying in Broadview she actually supports the protesters' position here. So that's in Broadview. Chicago, different story. You have Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson posting this clip from his news conference on Monday where he announced that executive order.
People die. When protesters confronted federal immigration agents in Brighton Park on Saturday, they were met with pepper balls and more repression. CPD responded to attempt to de-escalate the situation, and ICE tear gassed our police officers. Tear gassing the women and men who serve as Chicago Police Department officers is not how we make our city safer. These actions tell us simple truth. If we allow this administration to take away due process for anyone, we will allow them to take away due process for everyone. Today, we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this out-of-control administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids. Our school parking lots are not for ICE to load their weapons. They are for Chicagoans who drop their kids off to learn. Our libraries are not for ICE to prepare for a raid. They're for Chicagoans to read and relax. Our parks are not for ICE to set up checkpoints. They are for Chicagoans to play and enjoy. Private establishments can partner with us to make it clear that private property is private property, and ICE cannot enter establishments without a valid warrant.
So it goes on from there, and you even see social media pictures of signs popping up in Chicago, paid for by, I'm assuming, tax dollars, because they're coming from the city of Chicago, that spells out this is an ICE-free zone and gives the legalese to all of that. So the Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday held a news conference, and he talked about what he believes is the role of the National Guard in Chicago, the order of President Donald Trump. Here is the mayor.
Mayor Johnson, over the last week, I've literally interacted with over 300,000 plus real Chicagoans who say that it is hate speech for you to evoke the Civil War.
We'll get to that in a moment. I grabbed that wrong clip here. Here we go. Powers and legalities of the National Guard. We'll hear William Kelly here in a moment.
So they won't have policing powers. We know that.
And then could you kind of just go over again what you know about where the National Guard is currently located, and as far as what type of powers does the National Guard have in Chicago, and who are they accountable to in this moment?
Yeah, well, they're accountable to the federal government. right? Once, the president invokes, his, quite frankly, his constitutional authority in that he can federalize. The problem is, of course, he has not met the basic standards in order to be able to do that. And that's what the judge in Oregon indicated and made very clear. So they won't have policing powers. We know that. They can't arrest. So whatever their order is, I believe this is what the judge is asking for. What will be the specific, make the case first, and then what would be the specific assignments. The president has not proven either of those standards. And this is why, I'm going to remain hopeful that the judge, carries out what the judge did in Oregon, which is, this is unconstitutional, it's illegal, and it's dangerous.
And again, the case in Oregon's different circuits. What happens in the Northern District of Illinois in the 7th Circuit, we'll see. And all this is going to play out in, how rapid, right? I mean, how rapid is this going to play out? I know some of you here found this channel because of coverage of the gun ban in Illinois, and you know that it just takes so long to get through. I mean, the gun ban passed in 2023, and here we are, still in 2025 now, at the tail end. We don't have finality on that. But this case about the use of the National Guard and, possible temporary restraining order, we're expecting to get some outcome by Thursday. All right, so William Kelly, independent Chicago reporter at the news conference yesterday with Brandon Johnson, asking about the controversial comments Johnson made about how he claims the right wing wants to rehash the Civil War.
Mayor Johnson, over the last week, I've literally interacted with over 300,000 plus real Chicagoans who say that it is hate speech for you to evoke the Civil War, to evoke bringing back the Confederacy, to say that law enforcement is a sickness when you yourself have over 150 sworn police officers on your detail. What do you say to these people?
I think it's important to be able to make sure that to the people that you're talking to, though you're talking to less and less people every week, is that they know the truth. Here's what I've said. That the addiction on jails and incarcerations and the addiction of militarism, it is an evil. He made that very clear. And so I believe it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the real Chicagoans or the real people of America, instead of sending billions of dollars overseas, we should be spending it on the people right here in the city of Chicago.
Kelly went on to ask a follow-up question of Johnson.
Well, the real Chicagoans that I talk to, that I communicate with, mostly black and brown, actually, tell me that you don't seem to know the difference between illegal aliens and real Chicago citizens. They feel that you are siding with the illegal aliens over them in their communities. And sadly,
William, let's get to the question.
Let's get to the question. The real question is simply this. I don't know how to make it any more direct. An illegal alien from Nicaragua grabbed a woman on the north side last week, bashed her head into the sidewalk, knocked her unconscious, and raped her. If that had been your wife, Stacy.
Okay, all right, we're not going to answer it. Thank you. Thanks, William.
All right.
Would you want ICE to deport her?
All right.
To
Let's move on.
Yes or no?
Let's move on.
Definitely some controversial line of questioning there, and that's what you get at an open-ended news conference. But back to this issue of the phone call that the federal agents tried getting some action from Chicago police to help them out because of the surrounding they were under and the assault that actually happened in a couple of different places in Chicago. Let's go back to that tape that DHS shared here on their social media.
39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Okay, 10-4. And again, for all the units that we called to go over that way, 39th Police in Kedzie, if you could just hold off 911, 913, 923, 924, 933, 934. Just disregard that. 39th place in Kedzie. All right, and 999, just to confirm,
So you've got
place in Kedzie.
the 40-second clip there that's made the rounds all over the place. Earlier this week, Larry Snelling, the police superintendent, talked a little bit about this, saying that there's still more information they need to get, but here we are Wednesday when this allegedly happened on Saturday.
So the feds called for help at 12:28 p.m. There's a computer message timestamped at 12:28 p.m. that says no units will respond. Dispatchers later captured on audio saying that she's waving off units from 39th and Kedzie. I am wondering what would you call that, if not a stand down, and if there were already enough units on scene, how many were there circa 12:28, 12:30 p.m.?
That's something else that we have to look at, and we have to see because sometimes what you hear on the radio does not necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground once someone's there, but we did have officers over there. We have a timeline and a breakdown of who responded, and if you listen to the radio transmission, there were multiple officers who said they were going to that location, and they showed up because that's what CPD does when they hear that someone's in danger.
How that's going to end up coming to any kind of conclusion? Will there actually be some closure there? Or was it an indication that Chicago Police Department's brass don't want to help federal law enforcement? Because you've got the city of Chicago with Mayor Brandon Johnson saying that ICE needs to get out. Governor J.B. Pritzker saying ICE needs to get out. You've got these higher level law enforcement officers in a city like Chicago that's like Superintendent Larry Snelling. You know, he's works for Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. So we'll be watching all of this, of course, public safety and the continued conflict between the Trump administration and Illinois Democrats continues. Get the updates at thecentersquare.com. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com and wake up with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily with The Center Square. All right, one more segment, guys. Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that he is not a conspiracy theory guy.
I don't know. I don't think I'm paranoid. I definitely was saying to Tim earlier that I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, so it's unusual for me to say something like what I just said. But I think you could piece all that together because remember, they also called for all 50 states, the DOJ called for all 50 states to deliver their voter rolls.
Man, that is that's real quiet. I'm going to do my darndest here to boost this. I had all of the trimmings together. Let's see if we can do this real quick live. You guys are watching me here. All right. Get some amplification. Boost that. Let's see what we got. Yesterday, by the way, gotta share with you. Definitely didn't have I didn't have it planned for the show to cut off midway, so hopefully you guys were able to get that interview with U.S. Congresswoman Mary Miller, so that it worked out. All right. Man, I can't play those clips if it's not going to come through good. Here we go. Let's try this. Boost.
Earlier that I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, so
Boost.
It's unusual for me to say something like what I just said.
All right.
But I think you could piece all that together because remember, they also called for all 50 states, the DOJ called for all 50 states to deliver.
All right, let's do this. All right, thank you guys for your patience. We'll now check in with Governor J.B. Pritzker, who was with Tim Walz yesterday in Minneapolis, the former vice presidential candidates, and they had a sit-down chat with a mediator to discuss Trump and leadership by states in the federal government. So that's next here with Illinois in Focus Daily. It's Wednesday, right? We're almost through the week. Sweet.
I don't know. I don't think I'm paranoid. I definitely was saying to Tim earlier that I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, so it's unusual for me to say something like what I just said. But I think you could piece all that together because remember, they also called for all 50 states. The DOJ called for all 50 states to deliver their voter rolls. Why? They haven't told us why, but we know what they're looking for is an excuse to say that there's fraud in the election in 2026. That is the real purpose. So put all those things together. That is what I think is really going on.
And that's Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday at a talk he had with Tim Walz. And the conversation was about the National Guard and what Pritzker ultimately said, and we've heard it before. He believes that the Trump administration is wanting to interfere with the election in 2026. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Final segment here for the live show. You can wake up with us each and every weekday morning here to get the latest of what's going on in Illinois. And Governor J.B. Pritzker in Minneapolis yesterday afternoon laid out his understanding of the status of the legal challenge the state of Illinois brought against the Trump administration in federal courts. Here's the governor.
Heard at least an initial argument. The feds showed up basically unprepared, and so they have to provide to the judge a filing that she's going to consider and then make a decision on Thursday about whether there'll be a temporary restraining order against bringing National Guard from other states as well as from Illinois. So that's just the precursor.
So we've got, Texas National Guard coming up. Pritzker talked about, how long it might take for the Illinois National Guard being federalized and to get called to duty. But he also said right now, currently on the ground, there are, Customs and Border Patrol agents.
So on the ground, the problem we have, and it's been around for weeks now, is that we have the Customs and Border Patrol and ICE both, and they're wearing uniforms, carrying automatic weapons. They're marching in downtown Chicago and elsewhere. It's a show of force, and then they are actually bringing force and aggression to not just protesters, but just average folks.
And Pritzker went on to talk about what happened on Saturday, where he thought he was actually going to get some official communication from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of the Department of War.
On Saturday, for the first time, I got a notice that Pete Hegseth was going to call me to let me know they're calling up the Illinois National Guard. And that is normally how it's done. They either call you or notify you some other way. But I was told he's going to call, and I thought, great, first time in literally a couple months now that I would have heard from somebody at the White House about their mission. So I was told they were going to call. I literally canceled everything that I had that afternoon to make sure that I was there with my phone, no interruptions, waiting for that call. He never called. And it turns out he was at a football game and was part of some push-up competition at a football game and left the governor of the state that he's sending troops to waiting by the phone. I never got a call from Pete Hegseth or anybody else.
So again, that's Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about not getting a phone call from the federal government with the plans of the National Guard being federalized. He then talked about how he's not liking what he's seeing with Border Patrol agents taking to the streets, and he says asking people for their papers.
U.S. citizens who are brown or black are being stopped only for that reason and asked for identification that proves that they're a U.S. citizen. I don't know about you. Anybody in this audience have proof that you're a U.S. citizen on you? Because none of us, your driver's license is not proof. So none of us walk around with it. And think about the last time you can remember a regime that asked people for their papers to prove who they are because, the police on the streets, told you had to. So that's what we're turning into in this country.
Now, to that claim that, he's made that before, that people are being asked to see their papers and nobody carries around, documentation proving they're a U.S. citizen. The real ID, which is now the standard, I'd love to see a breakdown of the percentage of people who have real ID. It's, essentially a federalized national ID card, and it is only given to U.S. citizens. In Illinois, that Real ID card also is your driver's license for the state of Illinois. Lets you get onto airplanes, lets you get into federal buildings and such, and it's got the little star on it. But if you remember, Illinois also had the temporary visitor's driver's license, the TVDL. And just recently, they changed the temporary visitor's driver's licenses for non-citizens, to just a standard driver's license, not the Real ID. So the Real ID, I'm considering that it could be used as proof for citizenship. And how many people have a driver's license, a Real ID in their pocket? Versus just a standard driver's license, which is not Real ID compliant. It's not a federal form of identification, and they essentially replaced the temporary visitor's driver's license with just the standard driver's license and a standard ID instead of a state issued ID. So, and then you've got passport cards. I've got a passport card when I got my. Probably have to re-up that here soon. But you've got different forms that can prove that you're. Anyways. Total tangent. Governor J.B. Pritzker with Tim Walz yesterday. Walz chimed in on what he said was the Second Amendment adherence, and I don't know why he broadcast this out in the conversation about the National Guard on the streets.
Imagine a Democratic president sending the Illinois National Guard to rural Texas because we don't like the way things are going. It's the argument I keep making that one of the strongest Second Amendment arguments that Second Amendment adherents said was we need to keep our firearms to protect against the tyrant of a federal government in our cities. I guess. I don't know. So I think people are trying to adjust to this. They're trying to get it done.
So Walz making the comment, which somebody who covers Second Amendment issues, you regularly hear Democrats talk about, it's for hunting and you don't need a, 50-round magazine to shoot a deer. I mean, I've heard that come out of Durbin's mouth. I've heard, former President Joe Biden say a variety of things about hunting and sportsmanship. But, I mean, the Second Amendment, for a lot of those who support the Second Amendment, do understand it's a check against tyranny. So it's interesting to hear a Democrat, especially Governor Tim Walz, make that as a basis of the Second Amendment adherence, as, the tyranny aspect. Anyways, just wanted to put that in there because kind of fascinating to hear the Minnesota governor say that. Back to Governor J.B. Pritzker, he shared what we've heard before yesterday in Minneapolis, that he believes President Trump's trying to interfere with the election.
Next year, there's an election, and he's going to leave a lot of these folks in place. And when we have elections, because he threatened this in 2020, number one, he's going to guard the polling places. So you're going to see soldiers outside your polling place. That's going to intimidate a lot of people. And especially it's going to intimidate people who are not Republicans. And it's also going to intimidate people
from going to the polls, he says, and he went on to say, listen, he's not somebody who's buying into conspiracy theories.
I don't know. I don't think I'm paranoid. I definitely, I was saying to Tim earlier that, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. So it's unusual for me to say something like what I just said. But I think you could piece all that together, because remember, they also called for all 50 states, the DOJ called for all 50 states to deliver their voter rolls. Why? They haven't told us why, but we know. What they're looking for is an excuse to say that there's fraud in the election in 2026. That is the real purpose. So put all those things together. That is what I think is really going on.
So the governor putting that out there, other Democrats saying that as well, that the Trump administration is trying to get people to be normalized with security forces and then placing those near election polling places, and saying that is an effort to try to interfere with the election. Well, Judicial Watch, they're ramping up here to have the Illinois election integrity be front and center with the Supreme Court. So you've got Supreme Court oral arguments on Wednesday, an historic Illinois election integrity case. Let's just read through this, as, again, you've got got the governor saying that, alleging a conspiracy theory of Trump wanting to interfere with the election. But organizations like Judicial Watch say Illinois has interfered with elections with a mail-in balloting that allows for ballots to be 14 days after the election to be counted. You've got a whole host of issues that have been raised about the voter rolls and whether or not the state's rolls are clean and how those are cleaned, and what about the auto voter registration that happens. So Judicial Watch, they say in their news release, oral arguments to be held today in the U.S. Supreme Court in a historic case filed on behalf of Congressman Mike Boston. Two presidential electors who are before the courts have indicated their standing of challenge of Illinois law, allowing the counting of ballots to receive up to 14 days after Election Day. So we'll have those oral arguments, which are going to be coming up here in moments. So looks like 10 o'clock. So in 15 minutes here as we go live, you'll be able to listen to that at the U.S. Supreme Court. So interesting to hear all of this with Governor J.B. Pritzker essentially having a conspiracy theory while others are going to court to try to legitimately point at policies they say make elections less secure, less safe, less integrity in the state of Illinois for mail-in balloting and counting those ballots up to 14 days after a federal election day. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. We'll obviously be hearing more about what the U.S. Supreme Court has to say on that issue, so be sure to get the newsletter in your inbox at thecentersquare.com and wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning. Woo! It's a lot going on here with the Center Square. That's all I got for you guys. Greatly appreciate your patience with some of the audio glitches. Self-producing here with the Center Square in my home office. It's actually a blessing to be able to do this each and every weekday morning, and I greatly appreciate you guys being here to the live chat and joining in that conversation. Everybody who reaches out, if there's a technical snafu or something, I got like 3 or 4 texts from you guys say, what happened yesterday? Kind of, sometimes lines get crossed and things drop, but we record locally so we can get you what you need, all right? Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Thursday with Illinois in Focus Daily. See you back here.